Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for joining us tonight. In addition to the live broadcast of tonight's meeting, we have a professional photographer here capturing the evening as the city develops a library of stock photography. This notice is to advise you that you may be photographed tonight, and these photos will be kept and potentially published in a variety of ways in the future. If you'd like to opt out of being photographed tonight, please ensure you're sitting in the right section of the gallery right here to my far right, and we will ask that the photographer to avoid taking photos of that section of the room. So you're welcome to move over to this section if you don't want to be photographed. No, if you're going to be sitting over there, you won't be photographed, but if you're going to be over here, you will be photographed. Okay, seems like everyone's good with that. Okay, so welcome everyone to the part 2 of the Community Infrastructure Service Committee for Monday, February 13th, 2017. Up for discussion is item number 10, dealing with the Neighborhood Strategy Implementation Plan. And we do have a 15-minute presentation where we'll have Ms. Michelle Drake along with the fabulous Mike Farwell and Ms. Melissa Bowman and Ms. Nadia Mohammed.
Thank you so much for that
welcome,
kind introduction. Now I have a reputation to live up to or something. My name is Mike Farwell. I am a co-chair of the Neighborhood Strategy Project Team and a resident of Ward 10. I'm very pleased to be here today on behalf of our project team, and we thank you very much for allowing this opportunity to present to you. We believe this strategy will give residents more fun stuff to enjoy together, like community gardens and neighborhood events. It will reduce the red tape that limits residents from doing great things, and it will give neighbors more say and influence over the future of their neighborhoods. Our amazing project team included volunteers with hands-on experience working in their neighborhoods, and we were supported by a team of staff from different departments of our city. Several members of the project team are in the audience today, and I would like to ask them to please stand to be recognized.
No clapping in the gallery otherwise, though.
Over the past 18 months and nearly 1,000 hours of meetings, this team researched and discussed a lot of exciting ideas and information related to neighborhoods. In addition, over 150 other volunteers contributed their time to help create the Love My Hood strategy we are recommending to you today. From the beginning, we were determined to ensure Love My Hood was built by neighbors for neighbors. That's why we led a massive community engagement process to ensure the strategy is founded on the input and the ideas of the community. We offered a variety of ways for people to provide their input. Things like coloring books for kids and adults, phone calls to cultural groups, a neighborhood party, a lemonade stand survey, street team interviews, focus groups, and an online ideas forum. Thanks to all of those efforts, we were very successful in engaging the community. 5,343 people provided their input. That's the equivalent of 3 people for every street in our city. 145 community organizations got involved. In total, we had 3,842 hours of conversation with members of the community. That's like talking neighborhoods for 160 straight days. In addition to our success in engaging so many people, we were also successful in reaching people who don't usually get involved in city consultations. We heard from school groups, faith communities, cultural clubs, sports teams, neighborhood associations, youth and seniors groups, just to name a few. And we talked to people at parks, pools, splash pads, bus stations, soccer games, events, and shopping centers across our city. All of this input can give you confidence that the project team's recommendations are firmly rooted in the ideas and desires of our residents. So, what did we hear from all of those people? We learned that Kitchener residents don't expect someone else to make their neighborhoods great. They want to do it themselves. Of course, the city should be there to help, but in the end, the best neighborhoods are made by the people who live there. That's why Love My Hood is not about the city telling a neighborhood what it should or should not do. And it's not about City Hall picking a specific neighborhood and trying to, quote, lift it up. Love My Hood is about providing all residents with easy-to-use tools, resources, and supports that they need to take the lead and do great things in their own neighborhood. Residents take the lead, the city supports them along the way. That is the vision behind Love My Hood. We also heard that residents want us to focus on 3 specific areas of our neighborhoods: great places, connected people, and working together. By taking action in these 3 areas, we can help residents build neighborhoods that are safe, connected, engaged, accessible, inclusive, and diverse. We will create great places for people to spend time together. By creating places with lots of different things to do, we can provide neighbors with more reasons to spend time together, getting to know each other and building stronger relationships. To help create more great places, the project team recommends we make it easier for residents to lead popular neighborhood improvement. So we see more community gardens, painted crosswalks, public seating, neighborhood markets, little libraries, and more. We'll make it easier for neighbors to connect with one another. No matter where we live, we all want to belong to a family, a group of friends, a neighborhood, a community. When we feel like we belong, we are happier and we are healthier. And we are more likely to ask others for help in a time of need and to lend our hand to them in return. To help neighbors build stronger connections with one another, the project team recommends we make it easier to organize neighborhood events, especially street parties. And we create more opportunities for casual conversations by encouraging the construction of more inviting front porches. We'll work together because no one person or group of people can do it all. There are already a lot of people doing great things in their neighborhoods, but there is always more that can be done. After all, a neighborhood can accomplish way more and have a whole lot of fun along the way if we take advantage of each other's unique skills, knowledge, and abilities. To help people work together, the project team recommends we pilot the creation of 2 to 4 neighborhood action plans this year, and we triple the neighborhood matching grant to help residents pay for their improvement projects. Let me paint a picture of what the project team believes the future can look like thanks to Love My Hood. A woman who's never filled out a city survey or set foot in a community center sees a Facebook ad promoting the city's Build Your Own Bench program. That weekend, she mentions the idea to a few parents watching their kids play at the playground. They all agree their playground could use some more seating, and they're willing to help make it happen. Having never interacted with city staff before, these residents expect mountains of red tape and complicated approvals. Instead, they discover a simple, step-by-step process that guides them along the way, not to mention a neighborhood matching grant to help fund their project. City staff encourage these residents to reach out to a few more neighbors to get involved. They do, and discover 4 local seniors who rarely use the park because there's nowhere to sit and rest halfway through their weekly walks. So now the group wants 2 benches, one facing the playground and one close by, just off the path and under the trees for the seniors to enjoy. Next, the residents host a barbecue fundraiser at the park. The local neighborhood association gets involved and lends a hand. The corner store down the street donates some food and drinks. A fun time is had by all, especially the family that just moved in down the street. They made some new friends and even offered to volunteer with the neighborhood association, the first step on their path to belonging in Kitchener. And now, as the parents sit and chat on their new bench, there's no one prouder of their park than these local residents. They'll be the first to keep the park clean And you can bet they'll be back week after week enjoying the park, enjoying each other's company, and coming up with their next idea to make their neighborhood great. I'd now like to invite my fellow project team members, Melissa Bowman, followed by Nadia Mohammed, to share a few short words.
Welcome.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Melissa Bowman. I'm president of the Victoria Park Neighborhood Association and a resident of Ward 9. It has been my pleasure to be a member of the Neighborhood Strategy Project team, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to share my experience with you today. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time on the project team. It has been a rewarding and energizing experience, getting to know the other volunteers and sharing ideas with each other. We based our work on the assumption that there are already a lot of great things happening in our neighborhoods, and we should celebrate and build on that foundation. At the same time, we know that there are many people not yet engaged in their neighborhood, so we need new ideas to get them involved. One of the things I especially enjoyed was being part of the Best Practices Subcommittee. It exposed me to a diverse array of ideas and thinking about making great neighborhoods, and to consider which best practices would likely work in my Victoria Park neighborhood and in neighborhoods all across the city. I'm most excited by the intentional ways that the neighborhood strategy will help people connect with their neighbors. Through actions like more neighborhood events or more inviting front porches, I think connections between neighbors will grow and deepen. And as a result, we'll have neighborhoods that are safer and more engaged than ever before. I'm proud to live in a city that values its neighborhoods and believes in giving residents more say and influence over how their neighborhood changes and adapts into the future. I'm confident that the strategy and action items that the project team has created will have a positive impact on our city, and I can't wait to start using all the new tools, programs, and supports that will be developed. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Nadia Mohammed. I'm the president of Victoria Hills Neighborhood Association and a resident of Ward 8. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be on the Neighborhood Strategy Project team. We are a diverse group of volunteers from different neighborhoods, communities, and organizations. It was a great learning experience for all of us to engage with one another. Our discussions continued until we could reach the point of consensus. All opinions were listened to and given due consideration. I appreciate that volunteers were allowed to shape the development of this strategy in such a significant way. A series of drafts debated in multiple meetings ensured project team members were in agreement on the contents of the final draft of the neighborhood strategy. We have something that all of us approved without any reservation. Our project team is behind this strategy 100%. I'm also very proud that a large number of people were reached out to through lemonade stands at different events and cultural celebrations, online surveys, and focus groups. We came up with our list of action items by seeing what the community said and how we could respond and support their ideas. I do believe that the community is behind this strategy just as much as our project team. I anticipate with excitement how successful it will be to provide easy, step-by-step guides to help people come up with ideas and know how to materialize them, making it easier for citizens to plan and organize events without any barriers. That will be really helpful to my neighborhood, Victoria Hills, and I'm sure many others. Victoria Hills is quite diverse, with people speaking many languages and celebrating many cultures and religions. Events are the best way to bring these different groups together and build trust and understanding. I believe that many residents who attend our events will end up volunteering for us once they see how fun it is to be involved in our neighborhood. The neighborhood strategy will definitely help enhance connections and belonging among neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Drake?
Thank you. Big thanks to Mike, Melissa, and Nadia for speaking on behalf of the project team this evening. Early on in their work together, the project team made it very clear to city staff that if we were going to go to all the work of creating Love My Hood, we better be fully committed to making it happen. In their words, this strategy better not sit on a shelf. They clearly held up their end of the deal. I'd like to speak briefly to the plan that staff is recommending be put in place to ensure that Love My Hood happens. First, with input gathered from the community through Engage Kitchener, all of the action items recommended by the project team have been prioritized and will be completed over the next 3 years. Second, we have identified existing funding that can be put to better use by repurposing it towards the implementation of this strategy. The majority of that funding will go towards neighborhood groups to help them to help fund their neighborhood projects. Third, dedicated staff are being put in place to help ensure that this work is completed. Funding for these staff has been reprioritized from other areas of the Community Services Department, meaning that no new funding is required. And lastly, we are committed to evaluating the impact of the strategy and of these investments to show how we're doing in supporting neighborhoods that are safe, connected, engaged, accessible, inclusive, and diverse. On behalf of City staff, I'd like to thank the volunteers on our project team. It has been a pleasure to work with such a dedicated and passionate group. Each one of you has inspired me to get involved in my own neighborhood. I'd like to conclude by passing on that same inspiration to everyone here today. Take a minute to say hi to a neighbor this week. Find out what's happening in your neighborhood and attend an event, or better yet, offer to lend a hand. Together, we can make neighborhoods to be proud of. With that, Mr. Chair, we are now available for questions.
Okay, thank you. Before we take questions, I just want to have a comment to the clerk. Councillor Schneider is not able to click in. He's clicking in, but his mic is turning on. But I'll proceed with the meeting anyways, but I just wanted to let you know. Okay, so we do have some questions. Mayor Barry Bravanek.
Thank you very much, Chair Ioannidis. And while I'll say this again in my comments, let me begin, first of all, by thanking all of you that have been part of the steering committee for the literally countless hours that you've put into this project. It's very exciting, and I'm just thrilled with the report that's before us this evening. So thank you. I do have a few questions, though, that I want to ask, and I'm not sure. I guess you guys will figure out amongst yourselves who should tackle them, the staff or the citizen members. But the first one is, as you look at the level of engagement, and when we talk about 5,343 people, have we ever seen that level of engagement in any other sort of city process that we know of? And what do we think really sort of led to the high numbers that we saw?
I can respond to that.
Yeah, I'll click you and just remain clicked in.
Okay.
I know it's fun to click in and out. But,
I'll try to stay on. Thanks very much. My name is Darren Krupp, and I'm also on staff with the Neighborhood Strategy. My understanding is that we have had higher numbers in engagement campaigns before, but never the amount of depth that we've had. So this is not just a yes or no, do you want a casino kind of survey. It's a lot more in depth and a lot more conversational. I think part of what lent to the amount of numbers would be the diversity of ways that we tried to reach out. So we wanted to make sure that it was easy, it was fun, and it was convenient for people to be able to engage. So whether that was a street team, a focus group, online, we tried to offer a lot of different ways so that people could get involved.
Okay, thank you. Next question, and I know, in looking at different cities across Canada, there's a few other Canadian cities that have created this kind of neighborhood strategy. But there are a few, but not many. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about what we learned from them in the formation of this plan, and does our strategy recommend or do anything that's different from them?
So through you, Mr. Chair, maybe I'll take that one. One of the things you may not realize is that the project team members not only sat on project teams, but they also sat on the subcommittees. And one of the subcommittees did a lot of best practices research into what other cities are doing. To be quite honest, very few Canadian cities are doing this work. We did learn quite a bit from some cities around neighborhood action planning, and we've taken the best of what we were able to learn and ignored the others. In terms of what is different or what we're recommending that other cities do not, I do believe it's this concept of resident-led, city-supported. The other Canadian cities that I'm aware of that have equivalent neighborhood strategies are about picking projects in a neighborhood, or they are about picking 8 neighborhoods that are struggling and trying to lift them up. And that's not the approach we took here. We are saying the citizens will choose the projects, the citizens will lead the work, and the city will make it as easy as possible.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, in going over the plan, it clearly seems to have more details than some of the other strat plans that we've seen, particularly as far as staffing and budget go and so on. And I'm just curious, encouraged by it, but I'm just curious why we took that approach. Is it partially because of the points of the citizen committee? Like, we don't want this sitting on a shelf, and so you came with all of it all at once?
So through you, Mr. Chair, that's absolutely right. I can remember the first conversation where project teams, I won't use lecturing because I think that's a negative connotation, but they made it very clear to staff if they were going to dedicate these hours, we better do this thing. And so that's why, as a staff, we made the commitment and did additional work to figure out the funding and staffing. Okay.
And then the last question I have, and this one might be best for the citizen members. I don't know, Mike, you want to take it for the group or someone else, but is sort of looking back, at everything and looking at the recommendations that are before us, is there anything you would have kind of hoped ended differently or maybe was included but wasn't in the final recommendations that are before us?
I would actually say the opposite. We came out with more at the end of this than I ever envisioned going in. Not that I thought the work was insurmountable when it first began, but certainly I'm more than impressed with what the end result has been. I was also part of that best practices research subcommittee, looking at what other cities in Canada have done. And as Michael just said, the fact that the focus was on making this citizen-led and city-supported is exactly where we were supposed to land, and I think we've been very comprehensive with the results.
Great, thank you. Mr. Chair, at the appropriate time, I'd certainly like to move the recommendation that's before us.
Okay, it's noted. We have Councillor Sarah Marsh.
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis. This is an incredible day to have all the work that has that you have all been working on for so long to come to the table. So I'm very happy about that. I have a couple questions. I'm not sure who would like to answer, but you can decide. So first of all, what specific steps did the project team take to engage a diverse range of our community members? I know that Nadia mentioned online surveys, lemonade stands, and but I want to just understand, in what ways were you intentional about making sure you engage diverse community members?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Right at the beginning of our work, the engagement subcommittee set out some kind of identified some stakeholders that we thought were less represented in city consultations and came up with some strategies to reach them. One of the first things we did was actually made direct phone calls to a list of cultural and faith communities to make sure that they knew about this opportunity, and that landed us a number of opportunities with, for example, the Filipino Association, Liberian Association, and so on. With our street team interviews, this was a very effective tool to go out and target locations, so we were able to go across the city and make sure we had every ward represented, but also get to some places where we can reach people that aren't always engaged. So places like schools, bus stops, stores, different kinds of people as well. We targeted some specific demographics, so making sure we connected with some different seniors and youth groups. And then we did some things to help with accessibility or inclusion. So we offered childcare to some of our project team members and at the launch party. We offered transit passes to people that may need them, though no one took us up on that, and we offered translation services as well. The street teams, we did have them translated in Rohingya, Arabic, and Somali. So those are a number of different ways that we tried to reach out to different people.
Wow, that's impressive. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. I also want to know, if we're going to be, what is the phrase, citizen-led and city-supported? I'm just curious about that because this is the biggest initiative that, as far as I know, that the city has taken to move in that direction, and I'm just wondering in what ways are we going to make sure that our staff are on board with that. I know many of our staff already are, but I think that sometimes a workplace culture is hard to shift, and I'm just wondering what ways were we able to engage city staff along the way to make sure that we have some buy-in across the corporation.
So through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely, we agree. From the beginning of the process, we knew that one of the keys to the success of Love My Hood would be buy-in support from staff from across the corporation. So over the last 2 years, we've taken steps to ensure that staff were involved throughout the process. 3 main ways that they were involved, the first being on our project team. There were 11 staff members from across the corporation that sat on that team, in addition to the volunteers. In terms of supporting that work, we also had an employee advisory committee, and so we had, again, 23 staff from across the corporation that sat on that advisory committee. And then we also held some staff sessions around reducing what we called red tape at City Hall to ask staff, again, from across the corporation about what steps the city can take in the processes that we're responsible for to help reduce that red tape for residents.
Okay, great. One last question is just about measuring the impact. I'm so glad to see that you've incorporated that as part of the plan. Do we have any idea yet some of the ways that we plan to measure the impact that this strategy has on neighborhoods?
Yes. So similar to the mention earlier about the best practices subcommittee, one of our other subcommittees was a data subcommittee. So that subcommittee was tasked with figuring out how to measure and evaluate the success of Love My Hood. What they did was they reviewed best practices in other municipalities that have been doing similar work around neighborhoods. And with the help of the project team, they identified what we've started to call the characteristics of a great neighborhood. So when we refer to connected, inclusive, safe, accessible, diverse, and engaged, those characteristics were identified by the project team. The subcommittee then went on to define those characteristics and also identify indicators that could be used to measure those characteristics, and based on best practices recommended that they be measured every 4 years. Mm-hmm. So in the strategy, those measurements are referred to as the State of Neighborhoods Report, and our plan is to continue that work in 2017 and release that report later this year. It's probably also important to mention that at the same time, staff are connected to a broader group of area municipalities and other organizations that are interested in similar indicators. And so in future years, we anticipate that there might be opportunities to collaborate on measuring those indicators. Mm-hmm. And the hope would be that through collaboration, we could reduce our resources in terms of staff time and budget dollars.
I think I'm almost out of time. I'm pretty much out of time. Just want to quickly mention, I would love to see that collaboration be implemented, as it's possible. But also we have other organizations, even locally, that are also interested in understanding the vitality of our community, senses of belonging, etc. So it would be great to see some local collaboration that we could find ways to measure, just even here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Councillor Schneider, can you click in because I can't click you in? Sure. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis. First of all, I want to thank the project team for all your help and all the time and the effort and your expertise and your passion for this project. It's going to make a big difference in our community. In my ward, I already have some neighborhood associations that are up and active in doing things. So could you maybe explain how this neighborhood strategy will help them?
So through you, Mr. Chair, perhaps I can take that one. We are incredibly lucky to have such a strong network of community centers, as Council spoke about earlier today, and neighborhood associations. My quick review of the 18 recommendations that the project team is put before you, 14 of them I can directly draw to either supporting or making it easier for neighborhood associations to do their work. So that is a significant majority of the recommendations will help our neighborhood associations. But I think, hopefully, if it works, the maybe more important but less tangible thing is that more people will get engaged in their neighborhoods, they will volunteer, and then will become volunteers in neighborhood associations. When they help build a community garden and understand what a great time it could be and the impact they can have, they're going to look to do more, and we will direct them to the neighborhood associations.
Okay, that's great. Now, we've put a lot of work into this strategy. So many great ideas and so much potential. You know, it's a big report. So if I have a constituent come up to me and say, I heard about this neighborhood strategy, what's in it for me? How can I kind of boil it down and give them a simple answer?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we'd offer sort of 4, hopefully relatively simple points of information. If a resident comes to you and wants to know what's Love My Hood all about, you can let them know that it's about increased funding for neighborhoods. And so you can refer to the matching grant program, the placemaking challenge, as well as some of the work we're looking to do around the neighborhood action plans. You can tell them that it's about less red tape, so helping them break down the barriers at City Hall so that they can do those things in their neighborhood that they're passionate about. You can tell them that it will provide them more say in their neighborhood, specifically with respect to parks, playgrounds, and trails, and when we plan and redevelop those spaces. And then you can let them know what we heard loud and clear during the engagement piece is that it will provide them better access to information through a new neighborhood website.
Okay. Just for the project team, as you got all the engagement back and you discussed everything and went through everything, what was the most important thing that you learned?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The most important thing that we learned, I think I would say that, generally speaking, the folks that we spoke to with this massive engagement are quite actually happy with the way things are going in the city. There's a lot about their neighborhoods that they already love. Now it's just a matter of taking that next step, going from good to great, if I could say it that way. I was reflecting upon Mayor Vrbedovic's question earlier about, if anything's missing at the end of all of this, and really it would be impossible to say, because it's not like we came in to this project saying we're going to finish with 3 recommendations around great places, connected communities, working together, things like that. This was all brought about through the input from residents through all of the engagement. So this was completely citizen-driven. We had no preconceived notions coming in as to how it would end up. So I think more than anything, I was quite pleased to hear that people are generally happy with the way the city is operating, with things that are happening in their neighborhoods right now, but they're very anxious to be able to do more and have this reduction in red tape that they've asked for.
Okay, and just one last question. As we went out to where the people were, did you ever get tired of drinking lemonade and eating cookies?
Not one little bit. Perfect. No, sir.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Schneider. Councillor Etherington?
Actually, I was going to ask Mike if it was just lemonade you were drinking. So. But I won't ask that. I would like to add my thanks to, you're going to be thanked many, many times around the council chamber, but I have comments for later on. I'd like to go straight to questions. The one that intrigues me mostly as a councillor over the past 2 terms is one that I've run into frequently that deals with municipal boundaries. Municipal barriers. as I have tried, I'll give you a few examples. As I've tried to work on community gardens, you run into budgeting problems, you run into water supply problems. As I try to work on painted crosswalks at very obvious spots, I run into problems with, well, the provincial legislation does not agree this, does not approve this, etc., etc. In relation to public art, I've worked on a couple of projects that are still not there, that have been going for 2 or 3 years. For a variety of reasons, I feel very sorry for the people involved in those projects. So, without getting into too many other negative examples, I just wondered, can someone tell me how we're going to deal with those municipal barriers? Because I think that's the biggest problem, one of the biggest problems you're facing.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to take this one because it's a bit of a personal passion of mine. What I think is really neat about this program, so you talked about community gardens, painted crosswalks, and public art. What we will do, let's take community gardens as one example. We are going to internally get all of the city staff in a single room, legal, risk, parks, whoever is touching a community garden. And as city staff, we are going to agree on, as an example, the 10 steps residents must follow in order to have a community garden. And we will sign off on that. So as long as an individual group follows those steps, it should be easy. We'll have looked at it from a resident lens and broken down any of the needless steps in the process. And then when they need money, which is another issue that I think you raised, we want the neighborhood matching grant to be the place they can go. They have to bring money to the table, and in return they can get a matching contribution. And so we'll do that for community gardens and crosswalks and public art.
That's great to hear. I'll be watching that one closely. My second question relates to page 10-42, and it shows that about 56% of people say they're not particularly involved in their communities. Would someone like to attempt to tell me why that is? That's a high figure. Especially when I see so many people sitting here obviously really involved in their communities.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the page that you're referring to, 10-42, is information taken from a statistically representative survey that Environics completed for us. We wanted to seek that information because we knew we were reaching out to the community in different ways, but we wanted to make sure that what we were hearing was reflective of the broader community. In some ways, I'm not surprised that the number's that high. I don't know that I have a reason, but I can say I found, although it took lots of staff and volunteer effort, that some of the methods that we used, particularly the notion of going to the people, made a huge difference in having those conversations. Many people spoke to being busy and not having the time to respond to surveys that are emailed out or checking out the website, but because we happened to catch them for 10 minutes at a street event or in line, maybe just coming out of the grocery store, they were willing to chat and share that information.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
Well, this was a really interesting read. I have to tell you that I've got lots of sticky notes, and I'm probably not going to be able to get to all my questions. But I think the fact that you went to the people where they are, which is so critical in hearing what people really want to say and tell you, is probably one of the key components to the whole strategy. So when I start thinking about questions and some of the things that I wrote down, and Councillor Etherington certainly precluded my question on the 56%, which is really a little bit staggering and a little bit sad at the same time. Are you hoping that this strategy will totally decimate that number. And in 3-4 years, we're going to see a significant increase in people's responses if you were to go back to maybe even some of those same people.
Through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely. In looking at work in other municipalities and just research around the topic, absolutely, when people know their neighborhoods and start getting involved, there is an understanding that their level of engagement will increase. And so our hope is that absolutely some of these actions will increase that number.
Okay. So as we're looking at all the different blueprints, and I think one of the things that I wrote down here too is there's no easy fix, right? We've got some steps maybe around community gardens. Maybe we're going to cut some red tape in other areas. But one of the things as a councillor that I run into is the negative vibe, the negative feeling around City Hall. How many times have you sat in a room and people said, "Oh, you can't fight City Hall. Oh, you can't get anything out of those people." Do you think that this strategy and the way we're going about it will change that negativity and flip it on its head and make people feel, yeah, you know what, even though there are processes, even though there are steps, it's a can-do. We can do this.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I know that feeling is out there. I have to tell you that through this process, I heard just as many people say, actually, when I worked with City Hall, it was easier than I thought. Having said that, in my time in my current role, I know of volunteers who have a really great idea and they go to their ward councillor and they go to staff, and what they thought was a 2-month project that they were getting involved in to try to do something turned into be a year and a half of meetings and no progress. And so I do believe that if we can make changes here, streamline processes, have city staff help them, shepherd them through City Hall, that we can make an impact. I think it would be setting the bar too high to say that we'll get rid of that. Cynicism with government is a problem in all countries at all levels, but we can do our part here.
Mm-hmm. I like your word shepherding. I think that's I think that's important, and I think that's what you guys have been doing too, as a group, as a team. You've been sort of shepherding people to come out and talk to you, and then you've been shepherding them to gather together for the big neighborhood party. And I think that maybe speaks to some of the successes you've had with the engagement that you have, has culminated in this wonderful report. You've had some really intense one-on-one conversations probably with some people. And not that I want to focus on negative, but as I read through the pages and pages of comments, why do you think that there are, I'm going to see if I can highlight a couple things. I'd have to quit my job so I could have time to go there. Remove the nets and discourage people from playing all hours at night. So I mean, there's dozens and dozens of positive comments, but there's also dozens and dozens of comments that are like that. Privacy from my loudmouth neighbors. Wait till my kids get older. How can we, having those intense one-on-one conversations, did we see that this was the gaps? Is the attitude people are too busy, people don't have the time, or is it that some people are just going to always find the negative? I know that's probably a bigger philosophical question, but I couldn't help it when I was reading through the pages and pages of comments.
So through you, Mr. Chair, my personal opinion is that some people will always find the negative. The reality is that this strategy will not be of interest to 100% of our residents. Some people do not want to be friendly with their neighbors or get involved in community projects, and that's okay. That's their personal choice. But what we did hear from the over 5,000 people who got involved is there's actually a heck of a lot of people who do want to do this work.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the success of your whole entire group is that you reached out and you touched people, and you've made a difference just in your participation, and likely made a difference in those people that you've touched, and I thank you for doing that, because I think that even more so than this whole strategy and where this all goes is the reaching out and the connecting with those people, because each one of those people that you connected with, whether it was a positive or a negative, it's a comment. And I thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just going through the report, it's a phenomenal piece of document and an amazing exercise that our staff have organized, and dedicated members of the community, with those that participated, sacrificed their personal time to bring about the what's before us as a strategy. Just the information in it alone is enough, outside of the strategy alone, for us to get ideas how to reinvigorate our neighborhoods, and even at a city hall level, ward councillors, things that we may not have even considered. Wait a minute, we never looked at it that way. That's something that's maybe missing in a particular neighborhood in my ward, or a park in my ward. Just phenomenal information in it. I do have some questions about the strategy, and the questions are, I just want to make sure that we are going far enough. I realize this is early steps, so sometimes you have to be a bit cautious and take small steps. But because of the amount of time that's gone into this, I want to make sure that we challenge ourselves a little bit too. I'll start with the matching grant, and it outlines now $50,000 as what would be in the pot, for up to $15,000 as a single max loan, which I think is a single max loan that is an appropriate amount, especially when it's a matching and in kind is brought together by whoever's proposing the idea. But the $50,000 alone, would that amount provide an equitable share across the city amongst the various different neighborhoods that exist, especially because amount $15,000 could eat up very quickly?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I think based on our past 2 or 3 years of experience with the neighborhood matching grant, I think it's a good start. You nailed it in your comments. What we're proposing to you is asking you to give us 3 years to use these funds to demonstrate to you the value they can add to the community, and then we will be back asking, based on that experience, potentially a higher number, but a permanent number.
Well, you know what, I realize we're doing a three-year kind of a trial project of this, but I have full confidence how far and how well this is going to be utilized. Will staff start putting in mind some ideas for funding, natural funding to this as well? I'm just, as I was reading the report and looked through it myself, I even considered, we have our existing neighborhoods, which they themselves will see some level of redevelopment in the areas. And development is always looked at as a negative because it changes sometimes, the look of the existing neighborhood. But little is seen as a positive. Why not small component from that increased assessment tax base, just 1%, 1 to 5%. So it won't be significant that we're taking away from the general tax levy. But again, it provides a funding source, and it develops a direct correlation to, okay, that development, maybe, okay, it's a bit of an inconvenience, but wait a minute, there's more money coming right back into my neighborhood, something that...
Yes, so through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's an interesting idea to explore, and I should say that if we run into the good problem of not having enough money in the neighborhood matching grant, I can assure Council that I'll be back to you to make you aware of that. But in the meantime, we will look at ideas like you've suggested.
Well, I'm going to be knocking on doors telling residents there's $15,000 on the table. So.
Good.
The other thing that I was a little bit taken back by, the cul-de-sac enhancement. This is a program that exists already. Perhaps it's not always utilized the best, but it's something that it's a natural green space setting in a very defined little street that is a little bit of a neighborhood on its own. To push it as far as 2019, what's the rationale behind that? Because I thought that would be something that we could start utilizing it immediately along with the neighborhood gardens.
So through you, Mr. Chair, those were ranked. We had all of the recommendations out on Engage Kitchener for a month in late last year, and it simply didn't get a high rank. Now, I do want to say that's not to say that we shouldn't start to look at cul-de-sac projects today. It's just that we won't put our minds to a formalized program for 2 or 3 years. But if you have a cul-de-sac in any one of your wards, you can come and ask for a matching grant, and we can work through it.
Matching grant, and we do have the greening of that. So that's we're correct. Not putting a pause to that program.
No, that's correct.
That still exists. The other thing is neighborhood website. I looked at that and I said, okay, that's an interesting idea. Now, is that a website that a neighborhood would kind of have control over that themselves, or we would provide that assistance to define what that website, what the neighborhood is through that website, and administer that on behalf of the residents. Because, depending on who's taking control of it, neighborhoods transition over time, and that can fall away, all right? So would we retain certain level of support?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that would be administered by the city, by city staff, but what we really want to do is feature stories and ideas, because that's what people ask for is, I like to know what's available in my neighborhood, or I heard that there's a ping pong table in Tremaine Park. How did they do it? Who was involved? They want to learn those kinds of things. So city would be kind of moderating that forum and creating those stories, getting them up online, and people could be able to comment and share back and forth on those.
So apart from seeing the absolute blatant positive of the website, one kind of concern that jumped out a little bit on my mind, and I hope that staff consider that as well, and ensuring that we're proactive beforehand, is that we don't want to politicize those websites. We don't want that website to be an avenue where it pits one resident against another, or one group of people against another. So just be cautious how we administer that website. So that is not a problem that we end up encountering. I had some other questions. I'll see how the questions go, and I'll ring in accordingly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
Can you tell me how long staff have been working on this project?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's been just under 2 years since I was brought on to project manage the project, and both Darren and I have been dedicated on the project for most of that period.
I know there's been a tremendous amount of volunteer help, but what does it cost us to get to this point for this project?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in terms of the project budget, overall we spent approximately $100,000. Only $80,000 of that was attributed to the city accounts. The remaining funds were actually paid for by sponsorship revenues.
Now, does that include staff time or not?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, it does not.
Do you have any idea what the staff time was?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have that information on hand.
Okay. Excuse me. There were 18 projects or recommendations have been listed. I know that you toured to a lot of advisory committees and whatnot with those recommendations. Do we have any idea of what the cost will be to implement those projects?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as outlined in the report, if Council supports the creation of a new neighbourhood development reserve, we're confident that we can fund those programs over the 3-year lifespan of the reserve.
Out of that fund? Yeah.
Correct.
The loan fund is being dismantled or just discontinued. Why is that? I like projects where people have some skin in the game. So why was that taken away here?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if you'd like to refer to page 10 or 10-9 of the staff report, we do have a section on the Community Loan Reserve Fund information. In summary, only 11 loans have actually been issued since that fund was established about 19 years ago, with the last loan only being issued back in 2008. So given the relatively low uptake of the program, staff is recommending that funding be repurposed to the new Neighborhood Development Reserve Fund. And we think that the new fund meets the general intent of the loan program. So the loan program was intended to help to finance equipment and facility purchases for community groups. And under the grant program, under the neighborhood development program, we'd be maintaining that intent by encouraging residents to invest in improvements to city-owned assets. So a similar intent. The transition from that loan program is also consistent with direction provided by Council back in 2014 when there were previous funds reallocated from the loan fund to the neighborhood matching grant.
And also, staff anticipate that transitioning from the loan program to the grant program is likely to create more community uptake, and that's based on the transition a few years ago from the downtown facade loan program to a grant program, which did see an increase.
Now, what happens at the end of 3 years, and that big fund is all gone? Where do we go from there?
So through you, Mr. Chair, this is either a good thing or a bad thing, but 3 years assumes that every single grant is used to its maximum in every year. So that assumes that $50,000 is given out in each year of the neighborhood matching grant. So there is the possibility that that will not happen and it will extend beyond 3 years. Having said that, at some point in the next 3 to 5 years, staff will be coming back with a report to say, here's how we implemented the recommendations. We'll have measurables because we'll have evaluations, and then we'll be asking council for approval of recommendations for permanent funding.
Now, in addition to the $136,000 that's listed in this, one of the recommendations, there's a new department or new division set up. What is the annual budget for that department?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have my operating budget with me. It is the cost for 2 staff, but I can certainly email. It was in the annual. It was in the final budget day package, but I can email that to council.
Yeah, I couldn't find it. I was looking tonight. Just one final question: is there much information available around the matching grant? What our history has been for the last 2 or 3 years?
So through you, Mr. Chair, it is staff's intention in likely the first half of this year to come back with a report that will provide all of that detail and make some minor tweaks based on our experience. And so I would suspect that will happen before June.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Etherington?
No, I did mine.
You didn't click in? Okay. Councillor Singh?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few more. Through the report, it outlines neighborhood demographics profile, which is good. Best way to know exactly what the needs and wants of that neighborhood are based on the demographics. But they change over time, so that we are always observant of what that, the images of that neighborhood is. How often would we take a look at those metrics or update them?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as part of implementing that particular recommendation, staff will have to make decisions about the frequency of that information being provided. Based on some current practices that I know staff in the community centers use similar information, I suspect it would be annually.
Updating the annually, okay, all right. The other thing is, looking through, what jumped out was sense of safety. I think page 1090 shows that a little bit more clearly. Sense of safety is an important aspect to the residents, to the respondents. And they responded further that lighting makes a big difference as perception or sense of safety. So I can see the purpose of this strategy. It's really to call to action, to motivate residents to uptake on their local kind of micro level projects to enhance their neighborhoods. But I'm hoping the data that we've seen can also, we could be reflective of it and take steps to respond to that, because there needs to be a sense of pride of your neighborhood, sense of, and you can't have pride if you don't feel safe or if you have concerns. And those are steps we need to take on our own. Instead of our residents don't have the means to be able to do that. Now within the funding that we're outlined, will we be kind of reflecting on that information and outlining a project plan?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I do know that we have started to share, or we have shared the results, the same results that you're speaking to, with other areas of the corporation, in particular with our staff in operations and parks development. In response to the highlight you made about lighting, that was one of the common things that we heard in terms of concerns that neighborhoods had. We don't have a specific action item that responds to a resident-led approach for dealing with lighting.
I wouldn't see that. I would think that there's some recommendations or kind of responses that are very clear, a kind of consensus. You can kind of see it and observe it yourself, and where it can be seen that, okay, wait a minute, should we be doing something different? So that's why my question to you, to staff, was, are we going to be reflective of this data as well?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think the short answer is yes.
Okay, good. And the other thing is parks. It was clear to see parks are very important, parks and trails to our residents, enhancement of our parks. And it goes beyond of the micro-level projects, benches, or shaded areas. Will we start to reconsider our strategy of how we design parks? How do we rejuvenate our existing parks as well? Is that going to be something that's considered?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so you will notice that one of the action items does relate to the engagement process for developing and redeveloping our parks. And so we do anticipate that as part of that process, and in order to be responsive to the residents, that there likely will be changes.
Okay, good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
As I was sort of going over the questionnaires again, I'm not sure, maybe I miss it. Did we break out the difference between the residents that you spoke to that lived in like houses, single-family houses, townhouses, and apartment dwellers? Because I would imagine apartment dwellers may have a completely different perspective or desire to see things that happening in their neighborhoods. Do we break them out?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we did not in terms of the data we collected. When you're doing a street team interview for 10 minutes, you only get so many questions. So we didn't want to ask that kind of information. We did make sure we reached out to those groups to make sure we got that within our larger body of data, but we don't have it broken down.
Okay. So further to that question, then, if you did reach out to those people, were there themes that popped up throughout? That you could say, well, you know what, this is evident that we were speaking to this segment of the population or that segment of the population that you used in the strategies and the recommendations? There must have been some clear themes that came out of some of this.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if we're still referring to kind of perhaps a distinction in housing, single detached dwellings versus apartments, I don't know that we did start to see trends because, as previously mentioned, we didn't ask that question of everyone participating. What we did was for groups, in order to reach out to groups in multi-residential settings, we tried to connect with like a renters association or co-op associations. So they may have had a single focus group, but we would not have known for a broader segment of input what they had to say and share.
Okay. I think I'm going to read this over again one more time because there's so much fantastic information in here. Will you use the information that you have here for other purposes? Like some of the comments that I noticed were around property standards. There were some comments and legitimate concerns that, those people may not have known that you can go to your city councillor, you can go to city staff. Will we take some of those out over time and say, okay, you know what? These are some issues that were identified. Some of them are actually local issues inherent to a particular neighborhood. And will we see if we can fix some of that or address some of that without it being part of the neighborhood strategy, or pass it over to staff who could deal with it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I do know that we have provided some comments to different areas of the city in order to be responsive to residents. One of the larger examples being our staff in operations and parks development, because so many comments did relate to parks. They do have a full set of the information, and I do know that we have shared it with other staff as well, and absolutely I think there's value in sharing that.
Yeah, okay. And this is probably almost as good as us going door to door, coming with a whole list of what we heard. So my last question relates to ideas to improve the neighborhood, which there were an abundance of ideas. but I found it very, very interesting and very kind of telling that on page 10-85, that 27% of the responses, and that's, I think, how it was broken out, talked about events as one of the ways to improve their neighborhood. Is it because we as a city do a lot of events and so people kind of figured that's what the city should be doing? Or were there other reasons that you could conclude why people thought events was the best way to improve their neighborhood?
Through the chair, when people asked for events, I don't think they were assuming city-ran events. In a lot of cases, it would have been your small neighborhood association stuff, potentially even just a barbecue that is never a fully sanctioned event. I think a lot of people saw it as a solution to a number of issues because it gets people talking and builds that kind of relationship base. So there's really that expectation that once you get people talking, you can achieve a lot of different things in your neighborhood.
Right. Well, and I mean, I didn't say this as well, but now I'm looking again, and community gathering spots, community gardens, healthy activities, and those are actually gathering opportunities, and we could call them events as well, right? Whereas new infrastructure just didn't hit the mark. I thought that was really interesting. Right. Thanks.
Thank you. We have no further questions. We are now into comments. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through my questions, I think I made a lot of comments already, so I'll try to be brief as possible. You know what? If other municipalities weren't envious of us already, I can ensure that once this gets implemented, they absolutely will be. We're giving the tools to our citizens, to our residents, to take the destiny of their neighborhood and define it for what it is. Their neighborhoods won't be because there's a lack of because there's barriers, so they can't do something. It'll be what they want, how they want it, and really define the true character and the face of themselves as a community, and create a sense of collaboration, of helping each other. And that's the exciting part of it. It's not about just the aspect of events or the vibrancy. It's the fact that residents will know there's conversations taking place. Yeah, and there's a sense of understanding. And through that, there's more safety and better engagement with the residents, with City Hall. So more unity and connection. And that's what I see this document. But before I finish my comments, I want to say thank you once again to all those involved staff for the countless hours that you put in, but even more so to the volunteers. You sacrifice your personal time for the benefit of this community. I thank you. Our citizens thank you for your time.
No. Okay, thank you. Mayor Bravanovic.
Thank you very much, Chair Anitis. And as I began my questions earlier, I want to begin by thanking all of you, those who are both in the council chamber this evening, as well as those who aren't, that have been part of the steering committee and have literally put in hundreds upon hundreds of hours of work in terms of putting this strategy together. But equally importantly, to thank all of the thousands of citizens who have contributed their ideas, their views, their thoughts on this strategy. Because, I think as has been pointed out, unlike a very easy question, do you agree with casino or not, this was a level of engagement that was much more intense and more importantly, provided us with a broad range of input and ideas that ultimately have shaped the strategy that's before us. I think for all of us around the horseshoe, there's many reasons when you have the privilege of holding elected office, either as mayor or councillor, to be proud of our community. But seeing what all of you have accomplished with this strategy, literally creating a foundation to make what is already, what I believe, a great community and make it even better, is something truly impressive. And quite frankly, wants me to just want to come and give all of you a giant group hug to say thank you for all that you've done in laying the groundwork for something that I think truly is going to be seen very positively by our citizens and really be a model, not just for municipalities in Canada, but even beyond. I want to turn for a moment actually to a record editorial, because as I was reflecting on the comments that I wanted to make tonight, I actually went back to a record editorial on this issue because I thought, you know what, there's no point in recreating the wheel. We know sometimes there's good comments made out there already, and so I wanted to reiterate a few of those that were made in an editorial entitled "Make Kitchener More Livable." Every Canadian city you can think of builds roads, bridges, libraries, and arenas, all the things made of concrete, steel, glass, or asphalt that people need for life in the 21st century. That's just what cities do. The city of Kitchener, however, is going a step further. It's building something far less tangible, but just as important, a stronger sense of community for the people who live there. I think it's this part of the editorial speaks to the importance of building the social infrastructure which makes up our community. And then later on, it goes on to say, in a world increasingly concerned, and one only needs to think about the events in our own community and globally over the past few weeks, in a world increasingly concerned about people feeling isolated and alienated, and where the old connecting bonds of society are frayed, we need more than a place to call our home. We need a place to call our community. We need more contact that is human rather than virtual, socializing that goes beyond social media. We need more neighbors too. And that, quite frankly, is what this neighborhood strategy is all about. So to our staff, to the steering committee, and to all the citizens in our community who have played such a phenomenal role in making this happen, a heartfelt thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Etherington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, with the excuse me, with the massive involvement of people like you, I'm certain this report will not sit on any shelf. I believe the document is and will continue to be probably one of the most important documents ever crafted by residents and staff in past decades. I fully support the recommendations, and every one of you who have worked so hard on this very comprehensive report. To me, it's the front porch of our city, the front porch of Kitchener, and I really appreciate all of the work you've put into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yaneski.
Yeah, thank you very much. Interesting hearing all the comments. It's on this wonderful report, and there was a lot of reading, some 141 pages, of which we've seen that several times over the last 2 years because you've attended different meetings and sessions, and we've seen the chunks of them presented to us. And the work that you've done, I know I've met you at some of the events at Rockway or wherever we were doing your little investigations and consultations was quite well. I want to thank also Nadia Mohammed for her presentation from the Victoria Hills Neighborhood Association as president and her role, and she's in my ward. I think she's gone now. But anyways, she does great work for the Neighborhood Association, is a good leadership, and I appreciate the work that she does for the community. And speaking of community, the community gardens, I was approached back about 3 years ago about putting in one of these gardens that we're talking about, and actually we worked hard. We got that done in less than a year, and we got it built behind Victoria Hills Community Center, and it's used to its fullest by all the residents in the area, and works really, really well. So it's an example of neighborhood involvement. The other thing that I also want to comment on is that I know taxpayers in Kitchener get hit with the user fees for utilities, and they're up at 7, 8, 9%, and we all don't like it, but somehow we have to go through, and you got to bite the bullet, and you got to pay the bills because you need to follow through with that and get some of the stuff done. However, earlier today, we had a couple of projects that we were dealing with that I supported one, not the other, and these were projects that were involved with giving some money out to organizations, but nothing to the residents. They wouldn't benefit from it. And and it was sort of hard to support it, but that's just the way it goes. But here we have an example in terms of this report where the money's coming from the taxpayer and it's coming back to the residents in the neighborhood so they can get the benefit from it. And I think this is good. This is a good start to support the residents who take from the left pocket and pay your tax bill when it comes in, and now you're going to receive a chunk of it to work with your neighborhood. So that's a pretty good benefit that you'll all reap throughout the municipality. So on that basis, I'm prepared to support the report, and I think we're going in the right direction.
Thank you. Councillor Schneider, can you click in, please?
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis. Once again, I want to thank the project team and our staff. The work you have done is going to change and improve the lives of our neighborhoods and those in the neighborhoods. This, to me, it's an historic night, and I hope you're very, very proud of your work because it's going to impact lives positively for years to come. I can't wait to hear the ideas that are going to come forward, and I can't wait to see how our neighbors make their own neighborhood even more special and a very special part of our city. So I'm going to keep my comments short because I can't wait to support this.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
I've made sort of comments through my questions, but what I do want to say is this document is very thorough, reached out and touched people at all different levels within our community. And I think that if we use this document as the basis of what's going to happen and what the possibilities are and the opportunities that we will have to work within our community, my hope is that some of those negative comments that I read, that those people will come back later on and say, you know what, I may have been negative on that day, but I see where you were going. And I see the vision that we as a community are building, and that's what makes our city stand head and shoulders above other cities. And thank you again so much from the bottom of my heart for the time that I know. And there are times when it's not easy to stand in front of somebody you don't know and ask them questions, because we've all had to do that a number of times, and that takes a lot of brave souls and sometimes some hard shell exterior to get past some of those people who just don't want to talk. And I think you guys did a really successful job. I look forward to seeing all the great outcomes that are going to come from this.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, to start out, I guess I'm somewhat of a hostile witness in that I mentioned that nasty word called costs. No matter what we do, there are costs involved and there are things that we have to deal with. Having said that, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the hard work of our staff in preparing this document and the tremendous efforts from our community. We have a great volunteer community, and they always step up to the plate, and they've shown that again in this example. Now tonight has been a night of nice words, an awful lot of nice words. I can really appreciate neighborhoods are the most important thing we have. And there are going to be many occasions in the next few years when we start arguing about things at this round table, and we're going to have to stop and think about neighborhoods and keep in mind all of the great words that have been said tonight. We're going to have to walk the talk down the road. Tonight, I would ask, and I'm sorry to do this, but that you would break down the I'm prepared to support the two first recommendations that are the principle that's involved here. At this point, I'm not sure. I don't have enough details on the costing aspects of it, and so at this time, I'm not prepared to support them. But I'm totally in support of the principle of where we're going down the road. So if you could break those down into 2 votes, one for the first 2 items and one for the last 3. Thank you.
That's fine. Councillor Davey?
Thank you, Chair. I notice I didn't have any questions, and the few somewhat gray areas I did have were thoroughly questioned by my fellow members of council, because this is a very, very complete document that I'm very proud of. I try not to be redundant, but I would actually feel guilty with so much volunteer input on this without thanking the people that were involved in this project. This has been a very progressive, productive day. Earlier today, we approved a Civic Innovation Lab, which, without going into detail, really kind of plans to leverage technology behind the scenes to make resident lives better. And now we have our neighborhood strategy, which is a very much more front and center, literally on your front porch way of trying to make resident lives better. And I have to say, it really captures the sort of inclusive, barrier-breaking values that I think are common amongst this council and common amongst this community. So I'd thank you for the work.
Thank you. Councillor Galloway-Seelock?
Yeah, I too will just be brief and put out my congratulations and thank you for all the work that all of you have done on this. I don't think you will ever fully understand the impact you've had or the impact that this work will have. And I don't think you'll ever understand the depth and change that this work will have in our communities. I think it's going to touch so many people in so many different ways and so many different projects. And I don't think that's even going to be quantifiable at the end of the day, even though we're going to try and measure it. I don't think at the end of the day it's going to be something that we're going to be able to fully quantify. So I thank you for all your work and the impact that this is going to have, the great impact that this is going to have on our community. And I think it's sensational that staff can bring forward this report and do it all within existing budgets. Yes, it's rejigging, but we're not spending 1 penny more in our budget, and we're going to be getting a lot more benefit for our buck. And so I think that's really important, and I thank staff for that, and I thank all the volunteers for all your work.
Thank you. Councillor Marsh?
Thank you. It's been said, but I want to just add that you have gone above and beyond. You have sacrificed so much of your own personal time for the benefit of our community, and so that not only do you love your hood, but you have given our city a chance to love all our hoods. And we will continue to do that as we go forward. And, you know, I think that some people have a sense of apathy about, you know, oh, government, what's it doing for us? Well, no, it's we are here as a community all working together to make our community a better place. And it's this type of initiative that really makes me so very proud to be a part of the city. So thank you.
Thank you. And I am the last. And I know it's been a long overdue here with all the comments, but I mean, it just shows somehow committed this council is, this committee is committed to the work that you guys have done, and it's been said by all of us how appreciative we are. And again, it's my sincere and our count and the committee's thanks for all the work they do. I think some of you should have got danger pay because some of you were braving the 30+ degree weather out there, getting input, but it was great to see that. And more importantly, I think this is a step forward for our community and for our city in a new way of viewing our city, in particular being a more open and transparent city and more involving our citizens. And if we can mobilize all our citizens to be this active with discipline, imagine what we could do as a community if we can mobilize everyone. It would definitely make our jobs a lot easier and make it more pleasant for everyone. And again, thank you. And with that, we have a recorded vote. And Councillor Gazzola, can you clarify which paragraphs you want? The first two, and then the last three you want voted separately? Okay, that's voted as 2 blocks. Yes, I understand that. Okay. Let me just get to the page. All right. Recorded vote on the first 2 items of the paragraph. They're open. That's carried unanimously. And then the last three paragraphs. Voting is open. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That's carried. And that concludes today's Community Infrastructure Service Committee. And thank you, everyone. And thanks, everyone, for taking their time to attend this meeting. We'll have a 5-minute break for
I find the formality is not like I think that answers that.